Good afternoon, everyone. I am Assemblyman Josh Jensen, ranking member of the Assembly Health Committee. I'm so happy to be joined by my colleagues in the Assembly Republican Conference today on a very important topic. And in the Albany world, it's a very uncommon topic where we're calling for something very simple. We're calling for the April 1st statutory deadline to transition the Consumer-Directed Personal Assistance Program to July 1st. Legislation has been either introduced or submitted for introduction in both houses to do a very simple thing via legislation. We cross out the word April and replace it with the word July. A common sense piece of legislation, an idea for something that has, over the past few months, become not such an easy thing for New Yorkers who rely on the CDPAP program. In our districts and across the state of New York, the 280,000 New Yorkers who rely on the CDPAP program are nervous. They're scared. And they don't know what the future holds for them when this transition occurs. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is not the time to assign blame. Late Sunday night, the health commissioner admitted that this transition has not gone to plan. And while he's refusing to call what they've done as a delay, it is a temporary reprieve for people who have started the transition process and will not finish by April 1st. Now that we have acknowledged, that the executive branch has acknowledged that this has not gone to plan, the time is now to embrace the legislation that myself and my good friend and colleague Pat Gallivan had introduced, whether it's our legislation or the push by members of the majority in each houses to put partisanship aside, to put blame aside, and say that more than one thing can be true at the same time. The transition to a statewide FI may work. It may save $500 million in the long run. There may be bad actors in the field who have utilized it up until now as a personal profit-making endeavor. But it can also be true that there are a lot of good organizations who have and are continuing to care about these people, these New Yorkers, who want to stay in their homes, who want to receive the personal care that they desperately need and the survival of a critically important program that meets their needs. But it's not about just the 280,000 New Yorkers who are enrolled in the CDPAP program. It's also about the 420,000 New Yorkers who serve as their personal assistants. Brothers, sisters, parents, children, who care so desperately about their loved one that they are willing to work for them to make sure that they can get the care they need in the place where they can age and live and be New Yorkers in the most appropriate setting. Now is not the time for blame. Now is not the time for partisanship. 6 days away from April 1st, now is the time to do what's right. And whether it's embracing Senator Gallivan and I's piece of legislation, whether it's the governor herself sending us a piece of legislation, or leaders in either house to say, listen, we're going to do what's right. There's 47 members of the Assembly Republican Conference. And believe me, I'm not going to speak for any of my colleagues or for the minority leader. But we have 47 votes who are willing to do what's right. If any of our colleagues want to join us and do what's in the best interest, not just to see the CDPAP transition work and answer questions that have gone unanswered, but to ensure that people who we represent across New York, from the tip of Suffolk County to the Falls of Niagara, can continue to access the program they desperately need. And with that, I'm happy to bring up my colleague and my friend, Jody Giglio, to talk about her experience and her view and what she's heard from her constituents and from folks across the state. Jody?
Thank you, Josh. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. And thank you, Leader Barkley, for his unwavering support and leadership in defense of New York's most vulnerable. Thank you to my colleagues and our ranking member on the Health Committee, Assemblyman Josh Jensen, for standing strong in this fight. I'm Jody Giglio, proudly representing the 2nd Assembly District and serving as the ranking member on the People with Disabilities Committee. And let me be blunt. Governor Hochul's reckless takeover of the Consumer-Directed Personal Assistance Program is a full-blown catastrophe. The phones are jammed, the system is broken, people are terrified, home care workers are unpaid, seniors and people with disabilities are days away from losing care. And now, with time running out, Hochul is scrambling, not because she cares, she suddenly found a conscience, but because she saw the backlash, she saw our voices rising, she saw this press conference coming, and she knows we mean business. But let's be clear, her so-called delay is a joke. It's not a fix, it's not a solution, it's a political stunt. We demand a real delay, a real fix, and a real plan. No more chaos, no more excuses, no more harm to our most vulnerable. Governor Hochul is playing a dangerous game with the lives of New Yorkers with disabilities, gambling with their independence, their care, and their survival. Her reckless overhaul of CDPAP isn't about cutting fraud, it's about cutting corners. It's about handing this program to an out-of-state contractor with a record of failure. And why? To save Medicaid dollars? Spare us that. That commitment is nowhere to be found in the governor's bloated, highest ever state budget. Let's talk about what's really at stake. Independence. CDPAP allows people to hire the caregivers they trust, often family members. Hochul's takeover threatens that choice. Lives. Advocates are clear. Without CDPAP, people with disabilities will be forced into nursing homes or left with no care at all. Some simply will just not survive. Trust Hochul is handing this program to Public Partnerships LLC, a company with a disastrous track record and with 100,000 people still unable to register. The writing is on the wall. This is not a partisan issue. My colleague said it. Democrats, Republicans, disability advocates, healthcare experts, we're all demanding a real delay. And Hochul, dismissive, indifferent, nowhere to be found. CDPAP is not the problem, it's the solution. It empowers people to live with dignity in their own homes. Hochul's plan rips that away. The bottom line, stop the rollout, save lives. Governor Hochul must halt this disastrous transition before it's too late. New Yorkers won't forget who fought for them and who left them behind. We have to say it. No pay, no care. Hochul, don't you dare. We saw it with the rollout of early intervention. We saw what a debacle that was. We saw agencies and providers dropping out of the program, evals dropping away, children waiting for services when it's the most crucial time in theirs and their families' lives. This should have been a pilot program, is what it should have been. It should have been a pilot, it should have been a smaller region in the state rather than going prime time and statewide live, because this is not ready. I have waited on hold, calling the number on the DOH website for PPL. And then I've been disconnected after 20 minutes, told that I would get a phone call back. I'm still waiting for that phone call days later, and we wonder why people are not having a smooth transition. The system is broken, it needs to be fixed, it needs more time, it needs more attention. So I thank my colleague Josh Jensen from the Health Committee for asking for a delay and putting a timeline on it, July 1st. And if we need more time, we should get more time, because these people, our most vulnerable population, can once again not be forgotten about or left behind. Thank you.
And for in a rarity in Albany press conferences, for our final speaker, our Ways and Means Ranking Member, Edra.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Jody. Thank you for your continued leadership on this issue. So this isn't just about dollars and cents, but given my role, I'm going to break it down into that and why we need this delay in a moment. But this is about people's care. This is about their lives. And as my colleague said, this allows people to live independently. Well, guess what? When you can't live independently, when you can't hire a personal assistant to give you care in your home, in your community, you're going to end up someplace that's a lot more expensive. Whether it's in a nursing home, whether you're going to end up having to hire more professional care at a greater cost. So if we want to realize the $500 million that the governor said was the intention of doing this, we can't do it by costing people their care, by costing people their ability to hire personal assistants. Assemblyman Jensen mentioned it, 425,000 personal assistants, 280,000 New Yorkers who have relied on this program. And they are fearful as to what happens on April 1st. And let's be honest, yesterday the health commissioner made very clear, this isn't a delay, it's a grace period. Well, what I've heard repeatedly from the Department of Health, though, isn't about how do we ensure services are uninterrupted. Even in that delay, in that announcement, if you read the short op-ed statement, whatever you want to call it, what did it immediately shift to? Blame. The misinformation, the lies. That's all we've heard from the Department of Health for months and months and months. And at the health budget hearing earlier this year, when asked repeatedly, what did the commissioner talk about? Not so much what happens on April 1st to somebody who's unable to enroll or their personal assistant's unable to enroll, but more so that it wouldn't be the Department of Health to blame. It'll be, a health plan's fault that they're not enrolled. It'll be the individual public assistant's fault that they haven't enrolled. It'll be the fault of the other FIs that have been out there that they're not enrolled. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. What it matters is that these 280,000 individuals have access to their care and that care be uninterrupted. It's about people, but again, if we want to talk about the dollars and cents, if you lose access to that personal care that lets you live in the community, which is what this program was about, what's going to happen is you are going to end up in some type of institutional care at a far greater cost to our Medicaid program and to New York's budget. So 3 months allows additional time to get people enrolled, hopefully would allow PPL to actually hire the folks inside New York State that are supposed to be there serving these individuals as they're trying to enroll. And we're not hearing about these frustrations of people just being unable to contact somebody. I mean, there was a report the other day that from morning till night, the phone lines are jammed, nobody can get through. So let's take this common sense measure in the budget whenever we pass it, or maybe before then, because I have a sneaking suspicion that might be past April 1st. But let's bring a bill out. We've heard talk from lots of folks about this issue, but here's what we haven't seen. We haven't seen a bill move through either health committee. We didn't see any provisions for a delay in either one House budget. We need to give the individuals who need to enroll in this program under the new fiscal intermediary the certainty of knowing that they have time and they're not going to lose their care. So thank you to Assemblyman Jensen, Assemblywoman Giglio for their leadership. But let's take action now to preserve the services for these New Yorkers who are some of our most vulnerable population. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. And just to close, I'm so happy that my colleagues in the Assembly Republican Conference joined us today to maximize our call. But this is not about politics. It's about people. The Assembly Republican Conference has called for delay. The Senate Republican Conference has called for delay. Members of the Assembly Democratic Conference have called for delay. Members of the Senate Democratic Conference has called for delay. SEIU 1199 has called for delay. And AARP has called for delay. And most importantly, the people who rely on the CDPAP program have asked for a delay. If we truly want to see the benefits that this transition is supposed to bring, it is in the best interest of everyone, including the governor, to give more time for PPL to do what they are supposed to be doing and have contracted to do. For the FIs who exist in the state to get on the bus and participate. For the subcontractors who PPL has contracted with, to have them continue the yeoman's work they're doing to transition people. And it's precious time for every stakeholder involved in our CDPAP program to get the questions answered that the 280,000 New Yorkers who rely on it want answered. Thank you all, and open up to any questions.
People in the Senate Democratic Conference, and in fact, Speaker Hasty himself, or he's in the Assembly obviously, have said that they think that giving an extension is giving carte blanche to these FIs to continue to operate and continue to make a lot of money, they say fraudulently, off of the state Medicaid program. Do you agree with them that this is rewarding good behavior, or do you see that argument?
Well, I think more than one thing can be true at a time. We can do more than one piece of legislation at a time. If the governor and my colleagues in the state legislature are concerned that a delay could allow for more obfuscation and deferring people and encouraging them not to transition, then you can do two pieces of legislation at the same time. We do it oftentimes, but that should be part of the conversation. To deny a delay simply because, well, there may be some bad actors. Well, aren't we doing this to get rid of the bad actors? And if we think that we can get more people transitioned successfully in 60 days or 90 days, well, let's do something to hold the people who are hindering the process accountable as well.
Julie, but why do you think the governor has moved this timetable so fast? And it's been, I think the first day that it was announced that PPL had a contract was January 7th, and now it's 2.5 months later, and there's just they've been very against any moving the date. Why do you think that is? There's such a so like immovable.
Well, I think the answer that I've received, not from the governor directly, obviously, but the answer that I've received about why there is reluctance is that the law is the law. The law says the transition has to be April 1st, and when certainly I can understand a prideful nature of people when you're getting airplanes flown over the Capitol on the state of the state, or you're getting blamed every day with your face on a big piece of cardboard, that you may think that the 30 or 40, 50 people who are coming to Albany on a weekly basis are just out there to ruin what you want to do. But there's a lot of people who've never come to Albany, who can't afford to fly an airplane over the Capitol, who are nervous and concerned. So the law is the law, which says April 1st. But laws can be changed. We can do the right thing. We can pass legislation to give us the delay we need. And whether that comes from any of my colleagues or ourselves, or it comes as something directly sent down from the governor, it's okay to say we need more time. It's not an admission of failure. It's an acknowledgement that maybe things aren't going as smoothly as we hoped it would.
Members of the Republican minority certainly raise concerns about many things that the governor does, maybe even accuse her of bungling a thing or two. How big of a screw-up would you say this is in the grand scheme of things, in your opinion?
Well, if you remember my comments at the beginning, I'm not here to pass blame. I think we're 6 days away from this transition. When we were here a year ago and this was proposed, I was somebody who believed that we should take a year to study and figure out the best way forward. But that's not what reality is today. The best of intentions can go awry. when you have to rely on other stakeholders to participate in something, it's not surprising that it doesn't go smoothly, especially on a heightened time frame. So I'm not here to lay blame at anybody's feet today. I think everybody, whether they're in government, in the private sector, whoever, we can always do better. But when things don't go the way you foresee, it's not weakness. It's not giving up the high ground. It's an acknowledgement of what reality is. And the reality today is that we don't have everybody in the CDPAP program transitioned or starting the transition. We don't have all the personal aides beginning the transition or transition. And there's a very real reality that we could get to May 1st and have people who are not in CDPAP anymore, who cannot live independently, and will end up in nursing homes, EDs, or God forbid, something worse.
So then, so I know this isn't a bipartisan bill yet, but you intend to discuss this with Democrats, or
Yep.
I mean, what conversations have you had? Is there interest from the majority?
I mean, I think there's a lot of majority members who have recognized that we need to do something. I mean, we've seen at press conferences in the war room, majority members in both houses, they're calling for a delay. We've seen a letter circulated by members in both majorities. I haven't seen all the signatories on that letter, but I would think that it is a bipartisan letter because that's what was promised. I'd be very curious to see the names on that list. But whether privately or publicly, there are members of both parties who acknowledge that there needs to be some sort of acknowledgement of where we are. And a delay is the most common sense way to go about it, which ensures the survival, not just of the program, but of the people who need it.
And members of the majority were asking for whether or not, members of the majority during the budget hearings were asking whether or not April 1st was a good deadline and whether or not they would be able to meet and serve all those people. And the answers were yes. And clearly they're not, because they're doing an extension of 30 days, which in my opinion is not enough. The people that they're saying have transitioned have partially transitioned. They haven't fully transitioned. They have questions. They need answers. Their insurance policy is going to change. The caregivers, the aides, their insurance is changing. And from what I'm being told, it's worse than the exchange.
I want to hone in on that. At least from a press perspective, it's fairly difficult to get clear information out of the Department of Health. From your perspective in an oversight position, has Department of Health been open and honest with you guys when you've asked questions of what they're doing?
Yep. I think the nature of New York State government is that sometimes a co-equal branch of government in the legislature don't always have up-to-date TikTok information. Certainly we get periodic updates on enrollment numbers. I think the last one was on Sunday night in the Sunday night midnight release about the grace period. But what's troubling to me is we're getting numbers on the transition data about the users, but we're getting no data about the personal aides. And to me, and a lot of my colleagues, you can have all the people enrolled in the program you want, but if you don't have the people licensed and approved to provide that care service, well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of failure.
Yeah, and also the workers, the aides, the people that are caring for our most vulnerable, to be told you got to get registered by April 30th, and don't worry, we're going to pay you retroactively once you're fully enrolled. Who can live for 30 days in New York State without getting paid? Not many people.
Unless it's state legislators during the budget process when it's late. Anyone else?
Sorry.
Yeah.
The newly announced grace period. Do you think it's legal?
Listen, there's a lot of lawyers in the New York State legislature. I am not one of them, so I am not qualified to say whether or not it is legal. I also haven't seen the contract signed between PPL and the Department of Health, if that is something that is permissible under the terms of the contract. So, Vaughn, I don't know. That's a good question for somebody with a law degree.
Kind of, it's an off topic. I don't know if anyone wants it.
Well, I'm going to defer to the highest ranking member of the conference on off topic.
If we just got off with the Assembly Speaker, and he had noted when when it comes to budget questions he's been getting about preparing for less federal funding. You know, he keeps charging reporters to ask the Republican members of Congress why, about where they want to cut spending and save money that might affect programs here in New York. So just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
I do. Here's my question immediately right back. Our one House budget increased spending another $4 billion over the governor's proposal, right? Pulled $4 billion out of reserves, drove the out-year budget deficits another $10 billion, $38 billion in out-year deficits. If you're really scared that major cuts are coming, you're going to have to adjust later in the year, would you be acting in that manner? So I keep hearing the rhetoric from the other side about these fears of federal budget cuts, but they sure as hell aren't acting like they're scared of it. If you have that fear, you don't drive up spending further, drive up out your deficits, and start dipping into reserves that we've built up over the last few years. You preserve that so that that is there when you have to adjust on the fly if we had to later this year.
Yeah, but the speaker made the argument that if you recognize what you can cut now, you're admitting the cut is possible, and you're basically.
Finish.
Well, I guess to the point of the speaker, have you communicated with members of Congress, particularly on Long Island in your case, about avoiding deep cuts, particularly to maybe Medicaid, that would affect your constituents?
Sure, we talk to our Congress members all the time. I mean, but again,
and you've related that.
I'm not. Yes, but we are talking. I'm not saying we should proactively cut our budget. I'm saying don't drive spending even further and then say to me you're worried that we're going to have to make cuts later in the year. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, things aren't going so good at work. I'm scared I might lose my job. You know what? I'm going to go buy a car today. Would anybody do that? So if we're really concerned that we're going to have to make major cuts to our budget later this year, preserve those reserves, certainly. Don't further drive up spending more and more billions, and don't put us in a situation where now looking at a larger out-year gap because, if we have to make adjustments this fiscal year, say, midstream, everybody's talking about September, whenever that is, if that were to come to pass, because right now it's all speculation. Well, you're also going to have to deal with making cuts into future budgets. So why would you increase that number you're going to have to cut into the future budgets?
Anything on the MTA?
MTA? What about it?
In the budget, what do you want for funding and the capital plan?
Well, look, we have to fund the MTA, but as we said, a few weeks ago, right here, they have to get their fiscal house in order as well. This is what I hear from my constituents. When they read about the MTA is looking for more money, they say, why do I read about a scandal every few months? Why do I read about the cost of everything being exorbitant? So they have concerns that we take a serious look at that agency. There may be some funding proposal, right? I'll tell you, I've been around a while. There's a few of my colleagues who were here back in 2008, 2009, 2010. We're really talking about going backwards on the MTA payroll tax and possibly increasing that on Long Island and Hudson Valley businesses. Didn't go over so well with the public the first time, so I would recommend my colleagues that we not go down that road again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
Good job.